Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our planetary panel to give the overview for this upcoming May. It's going to be an interesting month, to say the least. And as with every other month we've done, let's get our words. So I'm going to turn to Susan first. Susan, what word did you choose?
I chose determination. It's very much a Taurus word, and it's because we're going through two different eclipses and coming out through that when I get my week. So for me, Taurus is very much about slow and steady wins the race and determination. So we just got to kind of plow on through and get to the other side.
Cool. Get to the other side. Ooh, that sounds a little bit ominous, but anyway. Tanya, how about you?
I chose the word endurance to describe the month of May because we have several planets in the sign of Taurus, which is a fixed sign, and it's known for its ability to go the long haul. Mars will be moving into Leo, another fixed sign, also known for its ability to never give up. And then we have a lunar eclipse in Scorpio, the third of the four fixed signs, who is also tenacious and willing to give its all. So not only do we have the endurance to see everything through that we initiated last month, we have the stamina and the durability and the willpower, I think, to walk through, up, and over every mountain this month. I think May 2023 is a month to endure and just never give up.
And so for me, I've chosen two words because I'm an Aquarian, and that's what an Aquarian does. They don't follow the rules. And my words for this month is change direction. And I think we're going to see a lot of that coming in through the month. Yes, we're going to need that ability to be able to do that. Let me share my screen because it's time for us to start checking on May. And of course, let me share my screen here on us opening the month of May. First of all, we open the month of May with Mercury retrograde. And you can be sure, as the panel met before coming online here to do this video, we're all looking at Mercury retrograde. And we did talk a little bit about the Mercury retrograde last month because, of course, Mercury started to retrograde on the 21st of April. But as we begin today on May 1st, one of the things we are seeing is that the sun up in the sky, if we looked up in the sky right now, we had a telescope and looked up in the sky, the sun is sitting at 11 degrees Taurus. Mercury is sitting at 11 degrees Taurus. Yep, Mercury's retrograding. So to the naked eye, if we looked up, Mercury is appearing to go backwards. But when a planet sits at the same degree as the sun, we call it the cazimi, number one, and we say Mercury is sitting in the heart of the sun. So let's take a moment and think about that. Our personal sun sign in our personal chart. So if you're walking down the road, someone says, what sign are you? You say you're a Gemini, or you say you're a Scorpio. That means that is the sign that the sun was in at the moment of your birth. And in our personal chart, the sun determines who we are when we are by ourselves. So this Mercury retrograde today is sitting in the heart of that sun. And that is some of the conversations that we are actually telling ourselves right now. So with that Mercury retrograde, we need to really challenge ourselves and go, is that true? Oh, my hair is not good enough. Is that true? I'm not smart enough. Is that true? And realize that if it is a conversation, Mercury, if it is a conversation you would not say to a friend, then in reality, we should not say it to self either. Sometimes we can be very, very mean to self. Last month as well, I also talked about an out of bounds Mars. Well, holy Toledo, Mars is still out of bounds until we get roughly to 14th, 15th of May. Sorry, the 5th of May. I just looked up at my notes up here. The 5th of May. So Mars is still out of bounds. And Mars is having a bit of a conversation, and I'm sure our panel will be covering a lot about Mars. But do remember, Mars is out of bounds. Mars out of bounds is taking us all on a swirl. So we are feeling, it's in the sign of Cancer. In medical astrology, Cancer is connected around our tummy area. So a lot of us are feeling an upset tummy right now. We're feeling some sense of nausea. We're feeling some sense of that swirling energy. And that takes us into the beginning. We open up the month of May with the moon sitting at 22 degrees Virgo. So the moon is having a conversation today with Uranus, the planet of unexpected events. And so this is really a big conversation. Uranus and Taurus, and again, I'm sure people will cover some of this, but Uranus and Taurus is always about our security and how secure are we actually feeling. Mars and the moon. In medical astrology, Virgo, the sign of Virgo, has to do with our digestive tract. So Mars and the moon is really getting us feeling that intestinal energy going through. Then, of course, we go to the 2nd of May, and now we've got the moon has moved into the sign of Libra. Well, Libra is an air sign, and Libra has actually now created a trine with Pluto. But on the 1st of May, very late in the evening, Pluto started to retrograde. Pluto moved into Aquarius, and it only came to that 0-1 degree mark. We will see it move back into Capricorn. It'll turn around, come back, move back and forth. And Pluto, we'll see Pluto being firmly planted, if you want to call it that, firmly planted in the sign of Aquarius in 2025. So the moon in Libra, air, Libra is an air sign, Aquarius is an air sign. The moon to Pluto is saying, so Pluto, you have been asking to create change. Pluto is about our evolutionary change on a larger global. You've been asking. So now, what is it emotionally? The moon in our chart shows us how we deal with emotions. Emotionally, what is it that we actually need to do in life in order to create some type of a balance and a harmony? I can guarantee you, since Pluto have gone into Aquarius, it has chiseled a bit of the mindset. It has asked you to think outside of the box. Aquarius is 5 years ahead of the time. So Pluto has been saying, don't just look at just today and right at this very, very moment. Try to broaden that particular mindset. By the time we get to the 3rd of May, one of the things we're looking, the moon is looking to come to create a full moon, which we're going to see on the 5th of May. So the sun is almost there. The sun needs to go 2 more degrees because the full moon, the lunar eclipse, is on the 5th of May, where the moon will be sitting at 14 degrees Taurus. Sorry, the sun. The sun will be sitting at 14 degrees Taurus, and the moon will be headed as well to 14 degrees Scorpio. With a full moon, you always have the sun and the moon opposing each other. We're going to really feel like we are stepping into the vibration. With a full moon eclipse, we are, 24 to 48 hours outside of that ecliptic energy. And so one of the great things to do is to set out some pieces of paper. What are some things that you would like to release from your life? Lunar eclipses are about letting go of the old, allowing healing to take place, allowing things to dissolve in your life that is no longer working for you. And so the 3rd of May, we're already pulling into that essential energy. Coming forward as well, let's step into that May 5th. Where we have, now we are at that full moon eclipse. This is an interesting eclipse. We've been having ecliptic energy throughout all of 2022 in the signs of Taurus and/or Scorpio. So this particular lunar eclipse is shutting off that particular alignment. So we're shutting down roughly about a 19-year vibration. 19 years ago, we had eclipse in Tauruses and Scorpios. So maybe even some of the events in your life that happened 19 years ago, you are now getting to see a resolution of it. We can also see as well, as with any full moon, it's not just the moon, we've got the sun involved as well. And that sun is sitting next to Uranus, the planet of unexpected events. So some of these events, I invite everyone on this ecliptic energy day, 5th of May, to sit and allow oneself to see the amount of changes that has gone on within yourself in the whole year of 2022 and now the 2023. The next set of eclipses will take us to Libra and Aries. We've already had one in Aries, the solar eclipse on the 20th of April. But 2023 then, the rest of 2023 will be very much connected directly with those particular signs. How do you know when it's an eclipse? Well, when you have one of the nodes within 15 degrees of the sun or the moon, and you can see the south node sits at 4 degrees Scorpio. The moon sits at 14 degrees Scorpio. So 14 minus 4 gives us 10. It is within the ecliptic energy. Because the full moon is connected to the south node, that is about shutting down some of the old. That's why we're not talking about opening the doors and having brand new. That's a solar eclipse quite often. But the South Node sometimes can bring in a bit of a sense of grief. Grief is not always about losing people in our life. We can sometimes grieve when we are a mom and our kids go off to university. We go through the grieving process. Or maybe we take our little ones to school for the very, very first time. We grieve that, oh my goodness, they're growing up. Or sometimes we retire after being in a particular job for 30 or so years. We can grieve that sense of rhythm, that sense of commonality. So grief, as I said, is not always about the fact of losing a person within your life, but we definitely will feel some kind of a sense of grief through this particular lunar eclipse. Allow yourself to feel that and realize that nothing in life is coincidental, nothing. And as the planetary alignments make their way through, it opened many doors for us. And sometimes with a lunar eclipse, we don't always see what the next door is going to be that opened. But because we closed this door, that then allows for this door to open. So on your pieces of paper that I talked about, I want you to write down things that you would like to have resolved in your life. And I want you to put a clear quartz crystal on top of that. Clear quartz is just, looks like glass. That's what it looks like, a crystal quartz on top of it. Allow it somewhere around your window area that the vibrational energy of that full moon can come in. And of course, we say we want this resolved for my better or higher good. That's what we want to do. So at the solar eclipse, we were asking for things to come in. At the lunar eclipse, we're asking things to be resolved and going away. And that's why I chose the words of change, direction. You know, I want to stop beating my head against the wall, trying to make this work. Resolve to release and let go. Any of you guys want to, Tanya or Susan, want to even comment about this particular eclipse? Susan?
Well, yeah, I told you earlier that it's landing right on my natal moon in Scorpio. And yes, I was worried about people, but actually it's more might be a loss of friendship, especially because my Taurus is in my house of friendships. So for me, I could just be, I will allow myself to grieve maybe over a loss of a friendship rather than worrying about death.
Yes. And a friendship, you know, that's an interesting conversation about friendships, because friends come in for a season and a reason. And sometimes when we evolve, sometimes our friends don't evolve with us. And that's okay. Yeah. That's all right. Yeah. And so sometimes you find friendships going that way. Doesn't mean to say that up here you won't come back together necessarily, but for now, what house in your chart? So these are the houses that we talk about. The AS house is always the first house. Underneath that is the second. Underneath that is the third, fourth. We actually come around the circle counterclockwise. What house in your chart is your Scorpio moon, Susan?
My fifth house.
So that, of course, has to do with love affairs. It has to do with children. It has to do with our real estate. It has to do with our creativity. And again, you know, sometimes when we talk about grieving our children, sometimes we want to have an even closer relationship, or we want to spend a lot more time with them. That's where some of the grief can even come in. Or I know you have a very creative side to you. Maybe you're also grieving, you're not getting as much time creatively wise either.
Well, yeah, I feel like I'm moving away from some of my creativity as I embrace astrology more, which I'm perfectly happy with. So
Yes.
just that letting go of that, and some of my involvement with different groups that I maybe would like to let go of a bit.
Yes. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. What about you, Tanya? Any comments about this eclipse?
Yeah. Well, I think the South Node and Scorpio also both represent excretion, an excretion of
Mhm, mhm.
toxic waste, for example. And so I think, this is going to be a key moment because we've been feeling this Scorpio Taurus axis for, a while, like you were saying, Holly. So I think that this could be a pivotal moment where, and especially with Uranus there too, where we're really saying, enough's enough, and we're letting go of, toxic situations that maybe involve manipulation and power and control. And I don't know, with Susan, you were giving your example, perhaps maybe it's friendships where there's been, an imbalance of power and control, for example. Also, what's interesting is that not only is the sun sitting in Taurus, but this eclipse is happening at 14 degrees, which is also the Taurus degree.
Mhm.
So I can't help but think that in some aspect or way, our self-value is coming into play into this, So yeah, like I would just say to people, are you trying hard to have someone in power recognize your self-worth, for example?
And I think that was very telling in the news, watching the news last night. Scorpio also represents like the sexual organs. So sexuality and things of that nature. And the news last night was talking about a lot of the sports places that are the coaches and so on, that appear to be now coming under scrutiny because of whether sexuality comments or bullying, and this is all being brought on completely by this lunar eclipse energy. We are filming this on the 25th of April, and I don't know about you guys, but for me personally, I'm already feeling this ecliptic energy, and I think it's because, and I know one of you will talk a bit more about this, but it is because we are between the two eclipses. All right. We'll move on from the eclipses. And so on the 6th of May, we then now have the moon having a conversation with Neptune. And in astrology, this is called a trine because you've got water to water. And moon and Neptune together is a very, very dreamy type of an energy. The moon is still in Scorpio, the intensification of that sign of Scorpio. And we've got that moon with Neptune certainly saying, so if we could dream, we could allow ourselves to dream, allow ourselves to play, allow ourselves to create a storyline. The moon is saying, what would you like to create? What is it that you would still like to bring into your life? We're still in the middle of that Mercury retrograde. You can see we're going to have that Mercury retrograde turn around on the 15th. So Tanya will spend some time probably talking about that. And that moon is by now still working its way with Mars. So we actually have in astrology, we have a grand trine. Mars is in Cancer, a water sign. The moon's in Scorpio, a water sign. Neptune is in Pisces, a water sign. So in astrology, this is called a grand trine. And sometimes when we have a grand trine happening in the sky, we can find ourselves getting caught up inside of that grand trine and not finding a way to get out. So emotionally we're looking to dream, sometimes it can be around our children, though, and the creating of things for our children. Be very wary of that, especially if you have older children. It's absolutely wonderful to wish the best for them. But sometimes the way we look at life and the way they look at life, our dream for them is not how they are seeing life from their set of eyes. And so Mars in Cancer sometimes can represent motherhood, mothership, mothering, mother connection, and that's what brought me into that particular grand trine. And then we get to the 7th before I pass it over to Tanya. And by now we've got the moon. The moon has reached into the sign of Sagittarius. The moon in Sagittarius, emotionally, we are straightforward. Like we're like that arrow. We are wanting to make our way, go straight forward, and to make that come into play. We are on that search for truth. 7th and 8th, that moon's in Sag. Man, we are on that search of truth, and nothing or nobody is going to knock us down on that. And so with that particular mindset, I will actually pass it over to Tanya to take us all the way up to the 15th.
Okay, well, thanks, Holly. We also have some exciting news happening too on the 7th, and which plays an important role in these first few days of the second week of May, and that's that Venus is moving into the sign of Cancer. And so, yeah, so here she is, she's starting to move into this emotional and sensitive sign, but she's also making this awkward connection called an inconjunction with Pluto right out of the gate over the next few days. And of course, as Holly was talking about, Pluto is retrograde at the current moment. And so that just makes this, situation just a little more complicated. Venus and Pluto in these particular signs, they don't have a lot in common. One is in an air sign and the other is in a water sign, and air and water don't mix really well. But ultimately, I think that, we can work with this energy with lots of understanding and patience. I know myself, I have a couple of inconjunctions in my own natal chart. I think an inconjunction is a bit of an annoying aspect. But yeah, so basically what happens is, like, really, when you think about it, what's happening when air and water mix, right? Venus in Cancer and Pluto in Aquarius basically are becoming condensation, for lack of a better word, when they meet like this. And we know that condensation happens one of two ways. Either the air is cooled to its dew point, or it becomes so saturated with water vapor that it just can't hold any more water. So this leaves me to believe that the questions we might be asking ourselves over these first couple of days of the second week of May are, for example, what am I hiding and afraid of expressing when it comes to love or my creativity, my self-worth, maybe out of fear of what others might feel about it? Or how am I, dampening my connections with so much emotion that, my connection with somebody can't hold anymore? I think the key to moving through this kind of energy is to just let things cool to a dew point, or, or risk, losing a connection or some creative project by basically becoming condensation. I think it's a good time to practice patience and hold off making any important decisions that relate to things like your valuables or creative projects, love, or the money that you earn. And I also think adding to this instability is the fact that Venus is also out of bounds until June 1st. And so at the top of the show, Holly was talking about, Mars being out of bounds. And she talked about how when a planet strays from the sun's ecliptic path, last episode by more than 23 degrees, it's considered basically out of the reach of the sun, or as we astrologers call out of bounds. So if you watch the April recording, Holly said that an out of bounds planet is a bit wild. It's beyond its influence of the sun and it's left to its own devices. And she talked about how an out of bounds planet becomes a bit of an outcast and becomes unhinged, so to speak. So when we apply this to the planet Venus, I think what we're talking about here are things like, our personal preferences, what we like, what we want, what we're attracted to, what we desire. And when she's out of bounds, these desires and pleasures are more likely to be unusual, eccentric, maybe even a bit unconventional. So I think it's a great time for creative expression that's outside the box. And what I would say is don't be afraid to take that walk on the wild side, whether it's love, your creativity, or something that even you want to purchase and invest in while Venus is out of bounds. But I think I would caution you and just say that wait for a few days for Venus to move away from this uncomfortable connection with Pluto and maybe even wait to the 9th when the sun merges with Uranus, or better yet, when Mercury turns, retrograde, direct on the 14th. Plus, we also have on the 8th, the moon is going to move into Capricorn and add more instability by getting into this kind of game of tug of war with Venus when she opposes Venus at 1 degree Capricorn. And I think, we could really end up in a power struggle of sorts. We might just feel torn between stuffing our emotions or, expressing them. And so what do you guys think of this aspect? I'm curious, do you guys have any suggestions, Holly and Susan, for our viewers about how best to work through an in conjunction?
Susan, I don't know if you want to speak or.
Well, for me, like Venus, if she's out of bounds and she's in Cancer, there could be, I think, maybe like too much of a focus on our memories and on our past, because Cancer is very much a sign about tradition. And so people can get bogged down sometimes too much in the past. And then you have, Pluto is in Aquarius, which is very future minded. So there's like that, struggle between, looking ahead to things that are brighter and more modern, or being stuck back into being too much of a traditionalist. So that was all I really wanted to add to that.
And I guess from my perspective, when I teach about inconjuncts, the word we use is adjustment, trying to adjust the energy of the both of them to make them work. Venus in Cancer, as you had commented there, Tanya, they like nicety and they like comfort and they like everybody getting along and playing nice and making nice words. And Pluto is not about that. Pluto is about laying the cards on the table, and if you like it, you like it, and if you don't, well, oh well. We just need to transform, and so this is what I say, and Venus is like, oh, but that's not really what he meant. He meant it much softer than that. So I think it's the adjustment that comes into play. Luckily, Pluto's retrograding, so he's lost a bit of his power.
Yes, exactly. Thanks, guys, so much. Now, moving on to May the 9th, the sun will cazimi Uranus at 18 degrees in Taurus. And we talked at the top of the show about, a cazimi happens when the sun and another planet meet in the same sign and degree. And the planet in cazimi with the sun is considered to be held in the heart of the sun, like Holly said, which is very different from a planet being independent and unruly when it's out of bounds of the sun, like Venus is at the moment. So when the sun holds Uranus, he gives him light and they merge together to become one. The sun, who is considered to be the center of our universe, wants Uranus to carry the sun's rays in everything it uniquely creates today. There's a feeling of electricity and excitement in the air and a whole lot of unpredictability, I think, on May 9th. I do think that there are 3 keys to making the most of this energy. If you feel an urge to express yourself in new ways, go for it. I think you can expect unexpected changes and embrace any thoughts that you have to break free from anything that you no longer can tolerate. And because we're becoming more in tune, more aware of our true nature, which may be a bit different from the old version of ourselves, when Uranus and the sun come together like this, I think, we're much less inhibited. We're more open-minded, more willing to, explore the possibility that we've been living our lives the way our family, friends, or even society expected us to. And I think some of us could get very fast and almost dramatic flashes of sudden insight on May 9th into how we, aren't being true to our own individual identity. And the Sun Uranus conjunction in the sign of Taurus is also about breaking free from old habits or material ties. So I think that there can be a sudden physical change, whether that's voluntary or not, or a desire to overhaul, what used to symbolize security for us. I mean, Uranus likes to shake things up, and I think this Cazimi will demand answers to what's worth doing, even if you fail. And I also think that the sun can, shed some light and bring sudden eureka type moments about how we can reinvent the way we earn money, for example, or how we make purchases, and even how we think of our own worth and value. Now, I want us all to go back and look at what was happening in our lives around August 2nd of last summer, because the Sun Cazimi Uranus could shed some light on things that we were experiencing around that time. And I say that because Uranus was at 18 degrees Taurus during that time on August 2nd. And I'm not sure, Holly, are you able to pull that chart up of August 2nd, 2022? Or is that just, yeah,
August
the
when?
2nd?
The 2nd?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, probably not.
No,
That's
that's okay if you can't.
No,
Yeah.
August the 2nd. Okay. No, it's not doing it. Sorry.
That's all right. No worries at all. So what was happening on August the 2nd when Uranus was at that same 18 degrees Taurus was that Mars, the planet of action and initiation, and the North Node that represents our direction were also sitting at 18 degrees Taurus. So whatever we were initiating in August of 2022, I think can now be admired by others. I think it can be sprouting, for example, or even celebrated. I think on May 9th, because the sun loves the spotlight. And so I got a little bit curious and I wanted to look and see what was in the news on August 2nd last year, just to see what maybe we'll see sprouting or publicly celebrated in some fashion on May 9th. And it was really interesting because I found 3 examples. The US proposed tax incentives for electric vehicles, which I think is very North Node conjunct Uranus and Taurus. And Ukraine announced it raised $20 million through individual donations for its Army of Drones initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Mars represents war and Uranus represents technology, but it also represents fundraising. And I think the best example I found of Uranus North Node Mars conjunct in Taurus was news that a US senator had secured a promise from the White House to build a highly contested gas line that had previously been halted by activists. And of course, we know Mars represents conflict and power, while Uranus represents protests, activism, and of course, in the sign of Taurus, which represents the land. So my question is could we be hearing more about these initiatives on May 9th? I think
Mhm.
it'll be interesting. And I'd love to hear what you guys think, Holly and Susan, about this Sun Uranus cazimi.
You want to go, Susan?
No, I'll let you go. I'm thinking about it.
It's a big
So
one.
I'm really interested to see, because in mundane astrology, world astrology, in mundane astrology, Taurus is also very much connected to the banking industry. And will the banking industry actually come out with a new coin, like a Bitcoin, or come out with a new way of being able to do business? Now, the only concern for me is that we're still in the Mercury retrograde. So the way that it comes out is not the way that it's going to finish. And Uranus, as you had mentioned, Tanya, is very much about electricity. It's very much about space travel. It's very much about everything that is unusual and electrically powered. I'll also be interested to see, will there perhaps be even a power grid issue on that particular day?
Yeah, I've been hearing several other astrologers also talking about power grid issues happening,
Oh,
possibly between sometime in May and August, the 1st of August. And yeah, I think this is a real doozy of a cazimi.
mhm.
And
Well,
I'll
even with Mercury retrograde, I mean, this could have something that would affect maybe the cell towers, which would very much fall under Uranus energy. So,
And they're all
yeah.
being ruled by this out of bounds Mars or Venus.
Yeah.
Venus is still out of bounds here on the 9th, is she,
yes,
Tanya?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, she is. Yeah.
So it's got to be something outrageous, because what we look at is what is the rulership. And the rulership of Taurus is Venus. So Venus is controlling. Yeah, Uranus is in the heart of the sun, but Venus is actually controlling this whole entire piece
By being out of control.
by being out of control. Doesn't that work well with Uranus? Uranus might like that idea.
Well, I think that's interesting, really, because Venus being out of bounds and Uranus have, a lot in common that way, don't they?
Mhm.
Yeah. So do you have anything more you want to say, Susan, about this aspect?
No.
No. So I think, I'll just finish this aspect by saying, I think that Taurus really likes to hang on, but the Sun and Uranus coming together like this says, possessiveness of people or things is just not an option. I think this is a time to allow freedom and independence to really shine. And then moving on to May the 12th, I just want to say very briefly that Jupiter, the planet of fortune and joy, will be moving to the 29 degrees of Aries, which was the eclipse point of April 20th. Susan talked about the eclipse in our April recording. And I definitely recommend going back to listen, because Jupiter will be sitting at this same critical degree of 29 degrees until May the 16th. And we did talk at length about our predictions for Jupiter hitting this eclipse point. It's a very sensitive point in astrology because it's the final degree and it represents endings and culmination, and is basically the final curtain call. So Jupiter transiting this point will illuminate, I think, and show us a bigger picture to the meaning of the eclipse. And we're also wrapping up all the lessons we've learned while Jupiter has been in Aries, starting way back in May 2022. So since that time, we've embraced our inner pioneer and learned how we can make our own our own opportunities. Sorry, we've been expanding our courage and becoming more enterprising. I also think it's very possible we could reap some rewards now for the personal growth we've had since May of last year, as well as see further abundance and success and blessings connected to events that happened in our lives around April the 20th when we had that eclipse. And I will say this, that, you know, as with all great things, there can be a shadow side, of course, and Jupiter is invisible right now. And we can't see him in the sky with our naked eye. And ancient texts say that when Jupiter isn't visible in the sky, there are less morals, less protection from bad influences. And when Jupiter disappears from our view, ancient astrologers also said that we should honor our advisors and watch that we aren't greedy. And plus, we also need to look at where Mars is, because Jupiter is in Aries and he's reporting to Mars in Cancer on this day. And well, water puts fire out, right? So we need to really watch out for an amplification of feeling crabby, being defensive and moody. And I mean, no offense to Cancer, of course. I have lots of friends and family members who are Cancer risings. And so don't shoot me when I say that. I think instead we can use this energy to take intuitive action, maybe, you know, just to let out all our feelings. I think it's a great day, for example, for cooking your heart out. If you know, and I think about, I don't know if you guys know this guy or not, but for me, he represents this transit so well. And that's Gordon Ramsay, right? He's just like the human form of this transit. He's known for being a bit over the top and letting out all of his emotions fly in the kitchen, right? Like, do you know what I'm talking about, Susan? I heard you giggling there.
Oh, I love Gordon Ramsay. I like watching him because he doesn't take, he pretty much tells it like it is when he gets a little brutal, but I mean, he definitely, you know, he knows what he's doing, and he wants to bring out that excellence in other people. Actually, he really tries to bring out their excellence, but yeah.
Which is very Aries, right?
Yeah,
Aries
well,
have
that
excellence.
level of arrogance is there, but I mean, you know, he also,
Yeah.
I think, it tries to help people a lot as well. And I know, you know, even different people on some of the competitions, you know, that might have not lasted till the end. He's told them, come and contact me, and you know, I'll find work within one of my restaurants for you. So, you know, he has a certain benevolence about him as well. And I mean, he's probably got, you know, huge amounts of money by this point, so he can do whatever he wants.
That nurturing aspect is so Cancer, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just think that he totally is the human form of of that transit.
But that Mars is creating a square to Jupiter.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we talked about in April, the eclipse, and how it sets up a vibrational energy, and how Jupiter is now going through. So Jupiter will pick up this vibrational energy. Mars don't like being in Cancer. First of all, Mars is about aggression, and Cancer is so not about aggression. But Mars is ruling this Jupiter in Aries, and Mars is the god of war as well. So we also want to see, can this be the resolution to the war that has been going on in the Ukraine? Because Jupiter's been going through Aries. Jupiter is that planet of expansion and opening up and pushing forward, but it's been ruled by this Mars. Mars by now will have gone back into bounds. It's not out of bounds anymore by this time. So have they perhaps, will this square have them run out of steam? Or going, well, I guess, you know, I've been trying, and we've been trying for so long, and we've been trying and trying and trying. And so maybe this square will say, what's the point?
Yeah, it's definitely going to force some kind of action for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So on March 14th, Mercury goes direct, finally, at 5 degrees Taurus. Of course, we're recording this and it's Mercury retrograde, like we talked about before, but Yeah. And that's Mother's Day as well. So,
Oh.
of course, as we talked about, Mercury retrograde is famously known for communication fobbles and technology mishaps. But it's over. And I'm sure many mothers will be thrilled with this news on Mother's Day. Our thinking has, I think, been at an extra leisurely pace since Mercury went into retrograde in Taurus on April the 21st. We've had a few weeks to really sit with our thoughts, and now we get to be very deliberate about making some choices. I think we'll be persistent, practical, and like I said at the top of the show, we're going to start making decisions between March 14th and June 11th that I think, will go the distance and endure, especially in June when Mercury will meet Uranus.
Mhm.
Whatever we thought we knew over the retrograde period, I think will no doubt look shockingly different by then. And we've certainly alluded to that a few times here already in this show. And finally, I just want to say before I wrap up, the moon is going to be super busy on the 14th and 15th. She makes a harmonious aspect with Mars in Cancer on the 14th, just before midnight. And then she merges with Neptune while we sleep, moves into the sign of Aries, and makes a stressful aspect to Venus and Cancer. And this all happens while Mars in Cancer makes a very flowing aspect to Neptune. And you're probably saying, what the heck does that mean if you're watching this? And the best way that I can describe this energy on those 2 days is Sleeping Beauty waking up from a coma and being forced to decide if she really wants Prince Charming after all, or if she wants to be her own damn queen.
Mm.
On that note, unless you guys have any other thoughts about this aspect, I'll pass it along to Susan to tell us about the third week of May.
Okay.
I don't have any other thoughts, so thank you very much, Tanya. That was extremely enlightening. We'll move on to Susan to take us through.
All right. I'm starting off my week on Tuesday, the 16th. And the first thing we notice about Tuesday, the 16th, is sometime during that day, Jupiter moves into Taurus, and his expansive energy in Taurus, it opens us up to the joys of living a good life and to sensual pleasures. And after being in that fast energy of Aries, he's happy, I think, to maybe have a little rest, slow down, and just simply enjoy what, all the bountiful things there are to enjoy in the Taurus season. Taurus is ruled by Venus, and we know Venus loves beauty, and she values the comforts of nice things and surroundings. So in Aries, he kind of urged us to be bold and adventurous and to take risks. But in Taurus, we're not as bold, and we're not risk takers. We're much more relaxed in our actions, and we can work on our goals at a more leisurely pace. But with, endurance, as Tanya had said, is her word, and with determination as well. We want clear directions and strong plans for our goals at this time, and we value results. So Aries energy is kind of like, they like to start a lot of things, but they don't necessarily see them to the end. So with, Jupiter in Taurus, it's definitely more about seeing results as well. So we can also, the more kind and generous that we are to others, the more good fortune that we will attract to ourselves. But there's always a downside. So because Jupiter is so expansive, we do have to be mindful of being overindulgent or becoming too complacent or lazy. So if you were to look at your natal chart and look at the house that Taurus occupies, say if Taurus was if Jupiter was in your 10th house, which is the house of career and stuff, you could see that this could be very beneficial to you if you've been working really hard on a project. You may maybe be recognized for your efforts, and perhaps a higher level job would be opening up for you. If you put in the work, you can definitely reap the rewards. If your Taurus is in the 7th house of relationships and you're in a new relationship, well, this Jupiter energy could be very good time for your love to bloom and to grow into something more lasting. So, Jupiter in Taurus is it's just a nice, I think it's a nice, you know, warm energy, not as fiery and feisty, but just very comfortable. Then if I move on to Wednesday, the 17th, we have, there's a lot of energy this week. The moon has moved into Taurus, where she joins up with Jupiter in the North Node and Mercury. They're kind of all there together in a little clump. And she spends 2 days moving through this sign. So the moon in Taurus, it's practical and it's devoted and it's steady, and it gives us a focus on our wants and our needs. We may be like want to eat, like go out and have really good food, or we might we want to feel really secure and we want to feel good. So meeting up with Jupiter, the moon, that first expands on this feeling of fulfilling our senses, you know, and just enjoying whatever we want to enjoy. And then when the moon moves on to the North Node, this is where we want to feel good about ourselves and our own self-worth. And then she moves on to Mercury, where we can become very vocal about what we want and what we need and how we're going to go about getting them. However, the moon in Taurus can also make us be a bit stubborn. So keep that in mind when you're voicing your opinion about things. And I mean, Taurus is, after all, it's a fixed sign, and it likes things to remain on an even keel without too much rocking of the boat, so to speak. So Taurus energy works hard at continually making adjustments so that things do stay stable and secure. And there's very strong determination in Taurus energy. So on the last day of the moon in Taurus, Friday the 19th, the moon joins up with the sun for our new moon in Taurus. And every new moon contains the promise of a fresh start. And this new moon in Taurus begins a cycle that's centered around coming back to basics and rebuilding our foundations after the intensity of the eclipse season. New moons are about beginnings, and they're time also for things to take root. So our ideas can be compared to our indoor seedlings that we're waiting for planting time. So, you know, we've planted them and we've nurtured them, and, you know, we're waiting for time to put them in the soil and let them grow. So we become more focused on doing tasks that are real and have substance, like gardening and yard work or doing home renovations. And it's also a great time to get out and just appreciate the beauty of nature and the new growth that's all around us in spring. Moving along to Saturday the 20th, we have Mars finishing off, well, he was at that 29th degree. He's finishing off his time in Cancer, and he's moving into Leo. So, you know, Mars, we all know what Mars in Cancer was like. He did not want to be there. He was not happy. So Mars moving into Leo, he's like the proud lion with the loud roar. He's back into a fire sign. He's self-confident. He's enthusiastic, high-spirited, and he's got, you know, kind of maybe grand goals that he wants to do. So, you know, after the 7 months in Gemini and then that time in Cancer, his spirit is finally happy to be back, you know, with that fiery energy. So we may feel like we can do anything that we put our minds to do, and we may be anxious and we may be in a bit of hurry to do it. But so we'll be more active, you know, and, you know, by the end of May, we tend to become a little more active, I think, anyway, but we'll be more assertive, and we maybe have to be a little more mindful of being too aggressive. But Leo is an optimistic sign, and it likes to have fun. And so we can look forward to some good adventures, I think, while Mars is in Leo, with that energy that it has. However, if if you look at Pluto is at 0 degrees and Mars is at 0 degrees, and they are in opposition to each other. So this is the first opposition that we have had in 2023, other than the moon going around and opposing the planets. We've had no other major planetary oppositions. So these signs are polar opposites. So you've got fiery Leo and you've got the airy intelligence of Aquarius, and they're creating, you know, this power struggle back and forth between them. I know that Pluto is retrograde, but he's still, you know, Pluto still has a lot of, I think, energy, even though he is retrograde. And if you look up to, let me just see, the sun, not the sun, I want to look at the North Node in Jupiter in Taurus. Where are they? So they would be into creating a T-square, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a T-square, which is, oh God, creates a T-square, and it's up to us, like, to look to the North Node and for Jupiter to solve this tension that's created between Mars and Pluto. So these three signs are all in what is called fixed signs. These planets, I mean, are all in fixed signs. And the fixed mindset, it does like things to remain the same. And even though they continually try to keep things in order and maintain so that they do remain the same. So if we take the Mars and Pluto opposition, they each want their own power and control over situations that, you know, maybe we don't want someone else to try to be dominating us and bossing us around. So if you're trying to move up at work, it's important to not be too aggressive, but just be aggressive enough to reach your goals. You also don't want to be passed over or victimized. So you also need to show that you are passionate about what you want, which would be the Mars in Leo would be bringing in that passion. And so the key in creating balance in this opposition would be using your brain power, the brain power from Pluto in Aquarius, because Aquarius is an air sign, which is to do with the mental activity. And rather than going with the aggression and the more physical energy of Mars, it's finding that balance between the two. In the North Node and the Jupiter at the square points, so the squares, North Node and Jupiter, they square Pluto and they also square Mars. So they kind of help to ease the tension and the struggle that's created between that opposition between, you know, Mars and Pluto. So the North Node in Taurus, you know, it wants us to recognize our self-worth and to appreciate what is truly a value of us and to know that we deserve happiness. The South Node in Scorpio, which would also be in square, is there to remind us of what can go wrong if we lose our focus and our awareness. And so when the nodes are in balance, we understand how easily things can be imbalanced. And without this balance, we don't appreciate what we have and we worry about what can go wrong. So we end up living in fear rather than in balance and peace. I'm kind of going off on a little tangent here, but bear with me. So the North Node in this 10th square to Mars wants us to use our passionate Leo energy for good, not aggressively or in anger. And the North Node squaring Pluto in Aquarius, it encourages us to use our intelligence or our science and our technology to work humanely to find a solution to the power struggle between him and Mars. And so then we look at the square aspect that is also happening between Jupiter and Mars and Pluto. So Jupiter in Taurus is more down to earth and it's calmer, generous, and optimistic. And so he's kind of trying to ease this tension that's coming off of these two very aggressive planets as well. So Jupiter gives us courage and it gives us enthusiasm. So in dealing with Mars, it's like working with a type A person who always has they always pushing and they always want everything done now. But that type A person, has a tendency to burn out from physical and mental exhaustion. So Jupiter is cautioning them both to, use their passion on the one hand and use their intelligence on the other hand in a more constructive way to work through their opposing mindsets. Would anybody like to comment on that while I take a breath?
Tanya, is there anything you'd like to say on that?
Well, Jupiter's coming into Taurus, you know, for the first time in 12 years.
Mhm.
And for me, Jupiter and Taurus, especially at 0 degrees, where it's like, you know, getting candy for the first time. It's like super exuberant and excited. And I can't help but think of things like, you know, big tax cuts, or I think of the sale of the century. So I also kind of looking at the Pluto-Mars opposition too. And I can't help but think about things like money laundering. Like I'm wondering if there might be some arrests or something like that around that time. I think that, yeah, I just think Jupiter into Taurus is very helpful in this T-square.
And I think, you know, Jupiter's just come through the fire sign of Aries. Jupiter's just had a big party. Just whatever anybody's offering, whatever anybody is doing, Jupiter's on it. Jupiter gets to Taurus. Let me say, Taurus is not going to put up with that from Jupiter. You know, Taurus is going to say, Jupiter, you've not appreciated one thing while going through Aries. You've just flitted all the way through. So we're going to sit you down and we're going to make you be grounded, Taurus. We're going to ground that energy and have that be the solid point between those two, because Leo is also about love. Leo is also about color. I love that idea of Mars going in like the lion's mane, because yes, Mars going in there is feeling like I can run the world. I can rule the world. And Jupiter is actually saying, hold on a second now. How grounded are you being? Let me give you a little bit of help. It's a square, so Mars is not necessarily going to want it. And also remember, in a T-square, what is the way out of a T-square? It's out through the top of the T, which takes us out to Scorpio. Investigate. Don't jump on the very first thing. Look into, ask questions. Don't be afraid to investigate. Don't be afraid to dig for clues and ask for answers. Mars and Leo want you to take the first thing and let's have fun. And, you know, if it's, worry about tomorrow when tomorrow comes, like we don't really care. Jupiter and Taurus is saying, wait a minute, we need that grounding. So no, let's not just jump on. Doesn't mean say we can't have fun a little bit further down the road, but let's just all settle down now and do a bit of grounding on that. I mean, that's how I see it. And ask the questions.
Yes.
Yeah, Jupiter's saying time to educate yourself on your finances before you go out there and start spending like crazy.
That's right. Because Mars in Leo wants all the bright makeup, all the bright lipstick, all the bright eyeshadows, all the bright color is what Mars is going to remind us. You've been in COVID for the last 2.5, 3 years. You've not done anything. Now is your time to live and open up the, you know, color will be it. Susan,
Well,
have you gotten your breath?
I've been wanting to say that brings in, you know, all this controversy with the drag queens, right? And I mean, they're just going to be out there like going full force, and like here we are, and you know, all this other nonsense that's going on about them. They can't, you know, they can't read the children, they can't do this, they can't do that. It's just beyond foolish. So there's also that kind of struggle that's going on there with that Mars and Leo energy, and Pluto, you know, in Gemini, although not in Gemini, in Aquarius, although he typically is representing the more, you know, out of the box people. There's power in there trying to control what's happening over here. So yeah, it's just very interesting times. But I will move on to Sunday the 21st. And Sunday the 21st, the sun moves into the air sign of Gemini. So Gemini sun, excuse me, inspires our curiosity in everything, our curiosity about people and places. It's mental energy, it's an air sign. And we find in our minds and our mouths may be going a mile a minute, because Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and then Mercury is all about our conversation and how we communicate. So we are empowered to expand our knowledge through thinking and reading and speaking and writing and learning and teaching and everything to do with words and language. And it is will be a lighter energy than Taurus for sure. It's more fun and lighthearted, and would just be, I think, more willing to talk to anybody who's willing to listen to us. So we have the Sun and Mars and Pluto, and they're all sitting at 0 degrees. So the Sun in Gemini is in a trine aspect to Pluto in Aquarius. So this is, good mental energy between the two air signs, and, the power of the Sun and our personal Pluto power will want us to know that anything is possible if we use our intelligence in the pursuit of our own happiness, and encourage us to try not to be overpowering, but to work through problems with logic and from a caring perspective. And it also, I think, that trine gives extra oomph to Pluto in his opposition with Mars. So the Sun is also then in an easy sextile aspect to Mars. So, the sextile is when they're 2 signs apart, and it's more of an easy energy. So that Aries Gemini energy from the Sun that can be feeding the flames of the Mars in Leo a little bit, and so it could make Mars and our energy a little more feisty. So once again, to me, it's still that power struggle between the brain and the brawn. Like it's still going on there, and but the warmth of the Sun is kind of encouraging us to use our charm and our passion to get what we want, rather than be aggressive about it. Just be charming, because Leos could charm the pants off of anybody. excuse the expression, but really. And so we carry this Mars Pluto energy for a few more days before Mars widens the orb between them. On Monday the 22nd, we start off the week with the moon moving into its home sign of Cancer, where we'll meet up with Venus, and it's going to stay there until Tuesday. So Venus and the moon, they're both feminine energies. So they've come to get, when it comes together, it kind of instills a more softer, loving feeling within us. And in Cancer, it kind of brings this energy to focus on our loved ones and our home and our family. We also have Mars in Leo coming into that square aspect with Jupiter and Taurus, which I'm pretty sure I already talked about that. The tension created by this could be what we need to push ourselves to take on a new project, or to take risks in order to achieve some big results in something that we're trying to do. Taurus is all about planning and strategizing first, but there is, there's courageous energy here, and we just have to be careful to take it a bit more slowly than our aggression from Mars would like us to, in order to avoid burning out from that emotional or physical exhaustion. And this energy stays with us through Tuesday the 23rd. So that pretty much wraps up my week, and I'll hand it off to Holly.
Thank you, Susan. That was lovely and also very enlightening. It's so interesting to watch how the dynamic of the actual energy flows and changes and shifts. And I think one of the big things that we are actually really starting to feel, as well as the North Node and the South Node. Most of those planets go forward. You're going to see Jupiter go 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degree, 4 degree, 5 degree. But you're going to see the nodal axis go 3 degrees, 2 degrees, 1 degree. They have a tendency to go backwards, one in every crowd. And, when we get to pretty much the last 3 or 4 degrees, we're starting to feel the pull of the sign that is previous in this case. So the north node will move into Aries and the south node will move into Libra. So this also, we talked about the ecliptic energy and how the eclipses are moving out of Taurus and Scorpio, which we've seen pretty much intensely through 2022. We've also seen, of course, the north node, south node of the moon, also going through Taurus and Scorpio. So I'm happy to say to our Taurus and Scorpio friends, you guys get a bit of a reprieve now and it won't be back around for another 19 years. However, for our Libra and Aries friends, you guys are next up. So we will start to see that. But I guarantee you, when we get roughly to that 23rd, 24th of May, yeah, the North Node has not moved into Aries yet, but it's getting ready to. And vibrationally, you will feel that pull. So let's actually go to the 25th. And on the 25th, Jupiter is playing with North Node. Now, in our own personal natal chart, as an evolutionary astrologer, I spend a lot of time looking at the North Node in your chart and straight across from it, the South Node in your chart. The North Node in our chart is what we have come to do. It shows us our purpose in this particular lifetime. The South Node in our personal charts, our natal charts, is often the skill sets that we are bringing in from other lifetimes, and it's pulling that in. And in coaching, lots of times we find ourselves going very strongly into the South Node part of our chart. It's what we know, it's what we've done, comes at ease, but it's time to recognize the North Node. So when we get to roughly about that 25th of May, Jupiter is having this conversation with the North Node. Jupiter is saying, so how close are you feeling to your own personal purpose? Taurus, how close are you feeling security-wise to getting where it is that you're supposed to be going? Jupiter in Taurus is asking us to look at our financial constraints. Are we making the money that we feel we should be making? Are we getting paid? Are we actually feeling secure in our relationships, in our work world, in our family world? Where are we pulling into the vibration of this? Again, just like Susan had talked about, we still got that square because Jupiter's at 2 degrees Taurus, fixed sign. Mars is at 2 degrees Leo, fixed sign. Pluto's in Aquarius, fixed. So we're still in the square, but specifically we're in the exactness of the square. Mars is saying, I just want to love. I just want to love. I want to be in love. I want to feel love. I want to be creative. I want to wear colors. I want to do what I want to do. Jupiter's saying, wait, how secure are you feeling there? And the North Node will be saying, and is it bringing you closer to your authentic, true self? Mars squares, create annoyances, right? So one of these things is not like the other. Mars is saying, well, I don't care about that. I just want to do my own thing. And I just want to be dramatic. And I just want to be creative. And North Node is saying, you need to be closer to your purpose. You keep talking about wanting to be happy. That's your answer. So that square, listen internally. In medical astrology, Mars in Leo is the heart and the ventricles connected to the heart. Hence, Leo is connected to love, connected to the heart. Mars while Mars is going through that sign of Leo, we may feel every now and then a little skip of the heart. that will be very much here. If you're going to feel it at all, it's probably going to be this later part of May. You may feel even your glandular. Taurus is our glandular parts to our body. Then when we get to the 26th, we still have a lot of the exact same energy that is going on. So let's go to the 27th. Now, one of the other things we're recognizing is that Mercury is sitting at 11 degrees Taurus. Mercury is what we call in his shadow, in her shadow. Mercury had been all the way up to 15 degrees, retrograded back, stopped, is coming back the same way. So we say Mercury is going through his shadow. And so Mercury is reminding us some of those conversations, some of those conversations you actually had earlier part of April. Let's go back to those conversations. Remember when you said blah, blah, blah. Mercury will remind you. People around you will remind you. The moon in Virgo is creating a trine. Earth to Earth creates a trine on that particular day. The moon reminds us we still might have some attention to detail here to make this happen. Yeah, I did promise that. Yep, I did say that. It is creating an opposition, of course, to Saturn. Saturn in Pisces makes our intuition explode. So the moon in Virgo, stop there and go, what is it exactly? And just be quiet and listen. The angels will talk to you. They will let you know what it is you need to do in order to achieve what you're supposed to be connecting and doing. By now, we've got Venus is once again going to come back to have that discussion with Neptune, like we talked about earlier in the month. This time, Venus is at 22 degrees. It's a very master number type degree. And she's also having that conversation with Uranus. Don't be surprised if you are able to find some unexpected money that you had actually put away, that you sort of forgot what you had done with it. Venus rules Taurus. So Venus is ruling this Uranus in Taurus. And remember, we said Taurus is connected around the banking industry. So it can be some unexpected monies just showing up somehow. The 29th, you can see, we're still playing. That Jupiter and North Node continues to play with each other for really quite a bit of time. They continue to try, and you're going to feel yourself, that sense of adjustment. You will actually feel almost a bit of that alignment. And what's happening is that the universe, God, spirit guides, whatever your belief system may be, is just trying to get you settled on your pathway. There's very little air planets. The only air we got there is the sun in Gemini, Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto's retrograding, so again, not a whole lot of help. So we've got to try and step out of our monkey mind, air being a mentality, and step more into the inner intuition. There's a fair amount of water. Venus in Cancer, Neptune in Pisces, Saturn in Pisces, South Node in Scorpio. We've got a fair amount of water there. So there's a fair amount of feeling going on. And that's where your answers are going to come from. When we get to the 30th, we have Jupiter and the North Node, both at 3 degrees. That's when you're going to feel, I'm on the right page. I've now reached the right page. Now I've got my answers. Now I get to feel where it is that intuitively, this Saturn has been working all the way through. This Saturn in Pisces, Pisces being the most intuitive sign in the whole entire zodiac. This Piscean energy and this Jupiter and North Node are trying to work back and forth together. I invite people who have their tarot cards, who have their angel cards, who have their energy cards, step into that energy field. There's a lot of the answers that are there. And the last day of May, the only planet that is retrograding is Pluto throughout May. In June, we're going to see, Saturn and stuff will step into retrograding, but Pluto is the only one retrograding here. Jupiter and North Node is trying to get the answers that it is trying so hard to get you to step into your own personal power. And so that's part of the reason why I had said my words today for this month is change direction. Because I think after we move past the ecliptic, the lunar ecliptic energy of the 5th of May, I think we see a change in direction. How we thought we were going to go is going to look differently when we get to the end of May. Susan, any final words you want to say or?
Well, I was thinking back, so the 19-year cycle. So 19 years ago, I think was probably when I retired from the phone company. And then I spent, a lot of years doing a lot of volunteer work. And now that I've embraced my astrology more, I've kind of, I'm going in that new direction, and I'm feeling less that I want to be less involved in the volunteer work as I go out with my astrology, because I feel that it's another way that I can be helpful to people and give them a little bit of insight into, what is going on through their natal chart. And just the few times that I've done that, I really enjoy it. And I've been, getting good feedback about it from the people that I've spoken to. So I do feel that I'm going in a new direction. So it's just funny how things work out, right?
Nothing is coincidental. And
No.
also Pluto in Aquarius is really, I think, remember, Aquarius is the humanitarian field.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that what Pluto is also trying to do is to show that sometimes our humanitarianism that we have been doing throughout may not entirely be reaching the people who need it the most. And that is certainly not saying do not help out, or I am not saying that. Mm-hmm. What I'm actually saying is Pluto's bringing a lot of awareness as to when we give money to the ABC company to make sure it gets to people in need. Is it getting there? Is that the best way to perhaps help our fellow people, right? And that's all coming from Pluto. Pluto will uncover over the next 2.5 to 3 years, and you can take these words to the bank. Pluto is going to uncover corruption like there is no tomorrow.
So I totally believe that there's more. That's why it's going back into Capricorn. It has to uncover more corruption. But then, when it finally gets settled into Aquarius, it will be, I think, much more focused. We'll be more focused on our communities and helping other people.
Yeah. Tanya, any final words for you?
Well, I was just thinking of what you were saying, and I have a great example of that. And I won't name names, of course, but a friend of mine had been put in charge of a very large estate, and her family members had left millions of dollars to 3 very large charitable organizations. And, you know, she had to fight for an estate fee, and they didn't even allow money. She asked for money for upkeep of her family members' gravesite, and they didn't allow it. And that really changed my mind around
Mhm.
in terms of donating to them. When I think about the money, if I'm going to donate, how can I help people in my own local community?
Right.
So I just, yeah, that just jumped right out to me when you said that. And I could see more of these kinds of stories coming out, and these organizations kind of being held accountable for, you know, what exactly they're doing with their funds. And I guess I'd also just like to say that to all of our viewers, you know, leave us a comment. And if you have questions about anything that we're saying, I know, you know, we definitely check in, and we're more than happy to answer your questions. So
Mhm.
we'd love to get to know you a bit more and engage with you. So we appreciate that so much, all the views that we've been having and that, but we'd love to get to know you too. So yeah, definitely leave us a comment, and one of us will get back to you for sure.
Exactly. And I just want to close up by saying thank you to everyone. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, because we'd love to hear from you. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.